and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Let's have a look at the headlines. Munich Security Conference opens. World leaders to tackle pressing issues. Next round of U.S. brokered Russia-Ukraine peace talks set for next week in Geneva. Donald Trump revokes a landmark ruling that greenhouse gas emissions endanger public health. Thank you for tuning in. The annual Munich Security Conference has opened in Germany, gathering world leaders to talk on pressing issues, from strained alliances to trade tensions and all-out wars across the globe. As the conference kicked off, protests also took place outside the venue.
The Munich Security Conference opens today, with leaders arriving for 3 days of high-level talks on global crises and defense. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has landed in Germany and is expected to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is leading Kiev's delegation. Speaking before departure, Rubio signaled the scale of change facing the alliance.
The old world is gone, frankly, the world I grew up in, and we live in a new era in geopolitics, and it's going to require all of us to sort of re-examine what that looks like and what our role is going to be.
His visit comes at a delicate moment for transatlantic relations, after a year of tensions over defense spending and the future direction of NATO. While leaders meet inside, protests are unfolding outside the venue. Several thousand demonstrators gathered to call for democracy in Iran.
We are here to support the Iranian people and the Iranian resistance, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, and the PMOI, the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, to say that the Iranian people do not want any dictatorship, neither the Shah, nor the monarchy, nor the religious dictatorship that currently exists. We are here to demand a democratic and secular republic for the Iranian people.
Greenpeace activists also staged an action in central Munich, hanging a large banner and urging Europe to reduce dependence on imported fossil fuels.
Europe's strength depends on our energy security. The EU is importing more and more fracking gas from the US that is making us vulnerable to pressure from Trump. This is why Greenpeace is taking action today here in Munich, because whenever we're talking about security, we also have to talk about energy sovereignty. Only renewables keep Europe independent.
The conference runs until Sunday, with defense, Ukraine, and the future of the Western alliance high on the agenda.
As European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul arrived at the Munich Security Conference, von der Leyen said Europe must invest more in its own defense industry, adding that most joint military purchases under a new €800 billion plan should come from Europe or Ukraine.
For years, we have heard from across the political spectrum, both within our alliance and elsewhere, that Europe must do more for defense. And that is right. Europe must become more independent and do more for its defense. A strong Europe also means a strong NATO. And that is the mindset I have brought to the European Union. Last year, we did more for defense in Europe than in the previous 10 years.
We had years, decades of complaints by the US about the fact that in Europe we were not spending enough on defense. That has changed with the summit in The Hague. The shift in mindset is that yesterday in the room what we felt, all of us, and there was a clear coming together of vision and of unity, is Europe really stepping up. Europe taking more of a leadership role within NATO. Europe also taking more care of its own defense. And this is really a staggering change. And this will make NATO stronger. Because it means that a strong Europe in a strong NATO means that the transatlantic bond will be stronger than ever. Because we have dealt with that big irritant on the US side of Europe not doing the same as the Americans were doing.
Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev spoke briefly to reporters at the Munich Security Conference about what he described as the emergence of a new world order. Responding to a question by A News' Orhan Amashov, Aliyev addressed the creation of the Board of Peace, an initiative launched recently in Davos and set to hold its first summit in Washington in the coming days. Azerbaijan's president said the new platform could serve as a mechanism for reshaping intergovernmental relations, stressing that any new world order must be built on cooperation and civilized rules.
Mr. President, everybody we have spoken to today is saying that the old world order is crumbling. A new world order is about to emerge, but it has not emerged yet. Just a few weeks ago in Davos, you signed the founding charter of the Board of Peace, and Azerbaijan is a founding member. And we know that in a few days actually, there will be another meeting in Washington. What is your reflection on this institution as potential element of the new world order?
You know, if you remember, I spoke about this, maybe not in details, but in general, that international law no longer is valid. And many countries just ignore them. And only to rely on international law will not solve your problems. And Azerbaijan's example really demonstrates that. So the emergence of the new world order or the new system of intergovernmental relationship was definitely in the pipeline. So the matter was who would take this responsibility to make a step. And I think that President Trump did a great job to initiate the Board of Peace, the institution which has a great future. Of course, everything will depend on the agenda. As you know, the first summit will take place soon. It's interesting for everyone what will be the agenda of the summit and what will be the outcome. But more and more countries already realize that they need to reconsider their approach with respect to intergovernmental relations, with respect to security, with respect to functioning of international institutions. We see that United Nations is totally paralyzed, cannot influence any of the issues, and there is no alternative. So hopefully we will see more common sense in working together, because a new world order should not mean that who is stronger, he is right. The new world order should mean new mechanisms of civilized world, of relations, and of international law.
The next round of U.S.-brokered peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia is set to take place in Geneva next week. According to Russian state news agency Interfax and Ukrainian officials, both sides scheduled talks for Tuesday and Wednesday in Switzerland. Moscow will be represented by Vladimir Medinsky, a Putin aide who led the Russian delegation in talks in Istanbul last year. The previous round of negotiations took place in Abu Dhabi in early February. At least 9 people have been killed and 28 others injured in Russian attacks across Ukraine in a span of 24 hours, according to regional officials. Overnight, Moscow launched a ballistic missile and more than 150 drones, with several strikes getting through air defenses and hitting multiple locations. In the Odessa region, 1 person was killed and 6 wounded as port, residential, and energy facilities were targeted. 5 people were killed in the Donetsk region, including an 8-year-old child, with more casualties reported in nearby towns. Fatalities and injuries were also recorded in Kharkiv, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. Kyiv is grappling with winter blackouts again after fresh Russian strikes battered Ukraine's energy network, forcing families to seek heat and food in emergency shelters. As the humanitarian strain grows, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine remains open to peace talks, but not at the cost of its national interests.
Residents in Kyiv lined up for hot meals after a fresh wave of Russian strikes left parts of the Ukrainian capital without heat, power and water. Overnight, Russia launched drones and ballistic missiles targeting Ukraine's energy system. Officials say tens of thousands of people were affected in Kyiv, as well as in the cities of Dnipro and Odessa. In Kyiv alone, Mayor Vitaly Klitschko says about 3,500 apartment buildings were without heating. Nearly 2,600 high-rise buildings lost electricity in the latest attack, adding to more than 1,000 already cut off by earlier strikes.
After the attack, there was no power or heating. Today, I saw a missile being shot down and burning debris flying everywhere. I could even see it from my window.
I have 5 children, 4 of whom are small. Some of them go to kindergarten. They are also at home because kindergartens were closed due to a lack of heating, and it is very cold. So we are all sitting at home. The elevator is not working. There is no water. The washing machine is not working, and there is no heating. That is the whole problem.
Ukraine's private energy company DTEK says more than 100,000 families are without electricity. One of its thermal power plants was also targeted. Meanwhile, in an interview published by The Atlantic on Thursday, Zelensky said Kyiv was willing to hold both a presidential election and a referendum on a deal. However, he stressed Ukraine would not accept an agreement that harms its national interests.
The fallout from the release of the Epstein files continues to rock Europe. Former Norwegian Prime Minister and ex-head of the Nobel Committee, Torbjørn Jagland, has been charged with gross corruption. Investigators searched 3 of his properties, including his home in Oslo, as part of a probe into his links with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Emails released by the U.S. Department of Justice appear to show Epstein covered travel expenses for Jagland and his family to properties in Paris, New York, and Palm Beach. Jagland denies criminal liability and says he is willing to cooperate.
The grounds for suspicion come primarily from these so-called Epstein files, which are very extensive, but there are indications that give reason to investigate the case and give cause for suspicion.
I am glad that I live in a constitutional state where the prosecuting authorities take their responsibility seriously. And I will be careful not to get involved because it is their responsibility.
French police have arrested 9 people in an investigation into a Louvre ticket fraud that may have cost the world's most visited museum 10 million euros, the Paris prosecutor's office said. Those detained include 2 Louvre officials, several guides, and an alleged ringleader. Police seized nearly 1 million euros in cash and about 500,000 euros held in bank accounts. The dismantling of the suspected large-scale fraud scheme adds to a series of setbacks at the museum, including a high-profile jewel heist, a water leak that damaged ancient books, and staff strikes, placing management under increased scrutiny. The investigation began in December of 2024 after the Louvre flagged 2 Chinese guides suspected of reusing single-entry tickets to admit different groups of tourists. U.S. President Donald Trump has reversed a key Obama-era scientific ruling that underpins all federal actions on curbing planet-warming gases. The White House argues the reversal will benefit America's auto industry by lowering the cost of production and making cars more affordable.
US President Donald Trump has overturned a scientific determination that greenhouse gas emissions pose a threat to human health. The 2009 endangerment finding, introduced during the first year of former President Barack Obama's first term, concluded that a range of greenhouse gases endangered public health. It became the legal foundation for federal efforts to curb emissions, particularly from vehicles. Its repeal removes the legal basis for federal climate regulations, and so Trump announced the termination of federal greenhouse gas emission standards for all vehicles and engines covering model years from 2012 to 2027, arguing the rules have harmed the U.S. auto industry.
Under the process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry and massively drove up prices for American consumers. That's why, effective immediately, we're repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond.
In a post on social media, Obama criticised the move, saying it would make the United States less healthy and less safe. The White House described the reversal as the largest deregulation effort in American history, arguing it would reduce car prices and cut costs for automakers by $2,400 per vehicle. The endangerment finding had enabled the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to act under the Clean Air Act of 1963 to limit emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, and 4 other heat-trapping pollutants from vehicles, power plants, and other industries. Repealing it will eliminate requirements to measure, report, certify and comply with federal greenhouse gas standards for cars, though the change may not initially extend to stationary sources such as power plants. Environmental groups say the decision represents the most significant climate rollback to date and have indicated they will challenge it in court.
Britain's ban on pro-Palestinian campaign group Palestine Action as a terrorist organization was ruled unlawful by London's High Court, though the ban will temporarily remain in place, and the government said it would appeal against the decision. Palestine Action was proscribed in July, having increasingly taken, quote, direct action against Israel-linked defense companies in Britain, often blocking entrances or spraying red paint. Being a member of or showing support for the group became an offense punishable by up to 14 years in prison. In a civil disobedience campaign that followed, more than 2,000 people have been arrested. The court ruled that the ban was a disproportionate interference with the rights to freedom of speech, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. Interior Minister Shabana Mahmoud said she would fight the ruling in the Court of Appeal. Over in Gaza, a massive wartime garbage dump has overtaken one of Gaza City's oldest commercial districts. International organizations are now stepping in to respond.
This impromptu waste site sits on the former Fras Market, a historic quarter selling items ranging from food to clothes and household tools to around 600,000 people. Rubbish and debris is piled high up to 13 meters because access to the main landfill sites in Gaza are blocked. The dump is said to be fueling serious health and environmental problems and the spread of insects and illnesses.
This situation has been affecting all the people living in Gaza City, especially those living in this neighborhood who have been at risk of health concern, especially during the summer periods. But today is an important day because the first truck started removing the waste from here to a temporary dump site in central Gaza.
While some local residents have been searching the rubbish for items of value, authorities and citizens are looking forward to the area being cleared. After a conflict, the new issue of solid waste build-up is being seen as a major concern. Alistair Burt, a former UK MP and Middle East minister, says. A news spoke exclusively to him.
It stands out as an example of the issues that are going to have to be dealt with in Gaza, and also as a symbol of the extraordinary destruction that has already taken place. Not just the 70,000 lives lost, the maybe 170,000 people injured, but the damage that's done, across Gaza. This will have a health implication, of course.
The UNDP says 570,000 tons of solid waste has been collected and dumped across Gaza since October 2023, and in order to protect public health is moving it to Abu Jarad in the south of the city.
Elsewhere, Bangladeshis are adjusting to life after the BNP's landslide election win. In Dhaka, people are sharing reactions to the results, with many watching closely to see how the new government will handle the country's challenges and deliver on its promises.
People in Bangladesh are looking forward to calm and stability after the Bangladesh Nationalist Party secured a decisive win in Friday's general election. The BNP and its allies won at least 212 of 299 seats, securing a two-thirds majority, while the opposition took around 70 seats, according to local TV reports. The result is seen as crucial for restoring calm after months of unrest following the ousting of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in a youth-led uprising, which disrupted daily life and key industries like garment exports. BNP leader Tariq Rahman is expected to be sworn in as Prime Minister. On the streets of Dhaka, the capital, people are going about their daily lives and talking about the election results, with some expressing surprise at the outcome, others showing disappointment, and some just wishing for a better future.
I only want a peaceful retirement. I hope the government will look after our conveniences. Or maybe our children would get good jobs. We are working class poor. Who else would look at us if not the government?
We hoped young emerging leader Nasiruddin Patawari, student uprising leader, would be elected from this constituency. He promised many changes. However, unfortunately, he wasn't elected. And I am watching for the other headlines as well. How Tariq Zia Rahman became the Prime Minister, immediately returning from exile.
Tariq Zia is an honest man. If he weren't, would people vote for him? Tariq is a great leader, and Jamaat people are against the independence of this country. Those who oppose this country's inception don't deserve to win.
The election was very peaceful this time in comparison to the previous ones. There was no violence whatsoever. I felt festive going to the polling station.
For many in Bangladesh, the focus now is on moving forward, rebuilding daily life, and seeing how the new government delivers on its promises.
After a short break, we'll take a closer look at the major stories from the region. Stay with us.
I'm Katie Wilson, and A News Talks has a brand new look. In this new episode, we sit down with three voices, three personal stories, and three perspectives that help us understand the world we live in today.
I was really excited, and at the same time, it's a new chapter in my life.
So far, the biggest project that I've gotten myself into.
From academia to real-life experience, A News Talks goes beyond headlines, focusing on people, ideas, and the journeys that shape them.
Not by the role you have, not by the salary you have. That's what I define as a success.
Honest conversations, meaningful dialogue. This is A News Talks, coming soon.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back. The UN Security Council has unanimously voted to extend the mandate of the sanctions monitoring team overseeing measures related to Afghanistan. The existing restrictions on Taliban leaders now remain in place for another year. A News' Tamim Bahis has the details in Kabul.
The UN Security Council renewed the so-called 1988 sanctions regime, which targets specific individuals and entities linked to the Taliban. The measures include travel bans, asset freezes, and arms embargo provisions imposed on listed members of the movement and associated figures. The monitoring team, which reports to the Security Council, is tasked with assessing the implementation and effectiveness of these sanctions, as well as tracking security, political, and humanitarian developments across Afghanistan. In a message posted on X, the United Kingdom's mission to the United Nations said that Council had unanimously renewed the 1988 sanctions regime against the Taliban, adding that the authorities in Kabul must take meaningful steps to meet their international obligations, including on counter-terrorism and the protection of the rights of women and girls. During the Council deliberations, Russia emphasized the need to maintain engagement with the Taliban authorities, stressing that dialogue should continue alongside the sanctions measures. The sanctions framework was first introduced in 2011, separating Taliban-related sanctions from those imposed on Al-Qaeda. It has since remained one of the main tools used by the Security Council to pressure Taliban leaders while allowing humanitarian and diplomatic engagement with the Taliban. The extension means the monitoring team will continue its work over the coming year, with regular reports to the Council expected to shape future decisions on sanctions and international engagement with Kabul. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
EU and Georgian officials have met in Tbilisi following reports of the bloc's intentions to impose sanctions on the Black Sea port of Kulevi. A News' Nini Nikolaishvili has more.
On 12 February, EU Ambassador to Georgia, Pavel Herchinsky, met in Tbilisi with First Deputy Foreign Minister George Zurabashvili. The meeting followed reports suggesting that the Kulevi oil terminal on Georgia's Black Sea coast could be considered under future EU sanctions measures linked to Russia. According to the Georgian Foreign Ministry, the central issue raised by Tbilisi was the potential impact such a step would have on strategic transit infrastructure. Georgian officials stated that no sanctioned vessels have entered the port and that no violations of EU restrictive measures have been recorded. They detailed ongoing compliance efforts, including cargo and maritime monitoring, identification of sanctioned entities, and coordination with European partners to prevent circumvention, including activities linked to Russia's so-called shadow fleet. However, the discussion extended beyond technical compliance. The Georgian side emphasized that Kulevi is part of the broader Caspian Black Sea Europe transport corridor, known as the Middle Corridor, a route that has become increasingly significant since Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted the traditional northern transit routes. As trade flows sought alternatives bypassing Russian territory, the Middle Corridor gained geopolitical and economic weight. For Georgia, development of this route is a long-term strategic priority aimed at positioning the country as a regional transit hub connecting Central Asia and Europe. Officials argued that sanctioning infrastructure tied to this corridor could undermine connectivity objectives that also align with Europe's diversification strategy. The sanctions debate comes as the European Union continues work on its 20th package of measures against Russia. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has stated that discussions, including on maritime services, are still ongoing, stressing that no specific proposals are final until agreed by member states. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Moscow and Yerevan are starting talks on restoring two railway sections in Armenia. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk says the move follows a request from the Armenian side. The lines would connect Armenia's rail network with Azerbaijan near the city of Yeresk and with Turkey near the settlement of Akuryan. The total length of the sections to be restored is about 14 kilometers. Overchuk says the project would give Russia direct rail access to Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan region. to Turkey and Mediterranean ports and further to Iran, opening routes toward the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. Azerbaijani and Armenian civil society representatives have convened in Armenia for a roundtable discussion under the Peace Bridge initiative. The two-day gathering will see discussions on the Washington Summit Peace Agenda, regional security, economic cooperation, public perceptions, and civil society's role in building trust. This follows previous exchanges, including a roundtable in Yerevan in October and a visit by Armenian civil society to Baku in November. Kyrgyzstan is warning that EU's proposed new sanctions package on Russia, targeting banks, crypto services, and exports in third countries, could destabilize Central Asia's economy. A News' Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
Kyrgyzstan has raised concerns over the European Union's sanctions policy, warning that the measures could affect economic stability in Central Asia and complicate cooperation with European partners. The issue was addressed in Berlin at a ministerial meeting in the Central Asia-Germany format. Foreign Minister Jeenbek Kulubayev said unilateral restrictions risk undermining social and economic development across the region. He stressed that Kyrgyzstan complies with its international obligations and maintains an open dialogue with the EU, including on preventing possible sanctions circumvention. These remarks come as the European Union considers its 20th sanctions package, which still requires unanimous approval by all member states. According to draft proposals, Kyrgyzstan is among the countries most affected. Brussels is considering the inclusion of Kirimet Bank and Capital Bank of Central Asia in its sanctions list over their alleged role in providing crypto asset services to Russia. If approved, the measures would bar the banks from transactions with EU companies and individuals. The package also includes additional export restrictions covering metal cutting machine tools and communications equipment. Sanctions pressure on Kyrgyzstan has been building for several years. The first restrictions were imposed by the United States and the United Kingdom in 2024, followed by additional measures in 2025 targeting banks and cryptocurrency platforms. Kyrgyz authorities have repeatedly rejected the accusations. Speaking at the United Nations last year, President Sadir Japarov described the sanctions as unjustified interference in the country's internal affairs and pressure on an economy still in the early stages of development. Fariza Kalimurzina, A News, Almaty.
Turkey has called for closer cooperation across the Islamic world to strengthen transport links and boost economic growth. In an address to ministers from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan urged for an integrated transport network. A News' Adam Morrow has more on that in Istanbul.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for enhanced transport integration among members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, saying reliable transport networks are essential to unlocking the Islamic world's economic and commercial potential. Erdogan made the remarks in a video message to an OIC transport ministers meeting in Istanbul held on Thursday. He said the Islamic world is known for its young populations and rapidly growing markets, but stressed that these advantages can only be fully realized through modern and integrated transport systems. According to the Turkish president, highways, railways, seaports, and airports must function as a single network to transform economic potential into what he described as strategic power. Erdogan pointed to Turkey's own experience, highlighting major infrastructure investments carried out in recent years. He noted that large-scale projects, such as the Marmaray Rail Tunnel and the Eurasia Tunnel, had already served to bolster the country's rail, maritime, and aviation capacity. The president also reiterated Turkey's continued support for the Trans-Caspian Middle Corridor project, an ambitious east-west connectivity scheme linking China to European markets. Erdogan said Ankara seeks to enhance connectivity among OIC member states by developing cross-border transit corridors and advancing joint infrastructure projects. He asserted that stronger transport links would help expand trade, improve logistics, and deepen economic cooperation across the Islamic world. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation brings together 56 Muslim-majority countries across the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, including both Turkey and Azerbaijan. Together, OIC member states represent a combined population of more than 2 billion people. This is Adam Mara for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
After a short break, we'll be taking a look at the proposed new EU sanctions on Russia that could impact Georgia. Do stay with us.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm J-Dad. Challenges. Today in the We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to Fierce. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we're recording
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back now to talk on the EU's possible sanctions on the Georgian port of Kulevi. We're joined by political analyst Vakhtang Maisaya coming to us from Tbilisi. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we've seen Georgian officials meet with the EU delegation in Tbilisi, trying to smooth things over. But do you expect Brussels to leave out the port from the final text of the new sanctions package on Russia?
Let me greet you and express enormous gratitude that you having me with you. Regarding you Georgian talks, it's about not so quite in that way. First of all, just about the EU, just about head of the EU delegation in Georgia, Pavel Khachinsky, he back to Georgia. And he also met with First Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. So that was only. It's not just about directly European Union and Georgian negotiations at large. It's one case. Second case, you're absolutely right. I guess the main just about topic of this, they are just about negotiations or talks, just would be possible sanctions on Georgia oil terminal Kulevi, which unfortunately been just about fixed the fact that this Kulevi also just produced and proceed with about Russian about so-called dark fleet, just about transactions, and of course Kulevi would be put on the sanctionary policy from the European Union. Absolutely, it's indications on that way. I would like to mention that Kulevi terminal produced about more than 10 million tons of oil annually. just about, and of course it's one of the biggest terminal in ages of the littoral, just about Black Sea littoral states. And of course this oil Kulevi just terminal, just about possible sanctions by European Union, and I guess possible later on by the United States, will also just seriously just harm Georgia's economy. But it not just been harm just about Middle Corridor as well, because Kulevi Corridor not being connected with Middle Corridor by its own origin.
That is exactly one of the arguments that Tbilisi is presenting, that the designation of the port might have a negative impact on the Middle Corridor. What are your thoughts on that argument?
No, it's just about, it's not absolutely soundless arguments, because Kulevi port terminal not being connected with Middle Transit Corridor, because Middle Transit Corridor only just about being capable to transcend about those cargoes and those just about goods which are coming from just about Baku, Caspian Sea, Baku, just trace to Georgia and go to the Turkey as like a land just about transit corridor, not by sea. So it's not yet connected. Supposedly it could have been connected if just about Anaklia deep sea port had been acted and just about being in work. But unfortunately, this even Anaklia seaport project been also just drained and waived, and absolutely no one known when just the project will be realized, unfortunately. So I would like to mention that Georgian just about littoral seaport, with slightly just about exception for the Batumi port, are not connected with the Middle Transit Corridor just about project. At time of being, maybe just about by 2030, when the Georgian government announced just more expansion, the corridors just about capacities, maybe they could just been absorbed and could be just a part of this biggest just Middle Transit Corridor just about project. And but so far this just Kulevi terminal, even just Poti port, has like less implications with the Middle Transit Corridor case.
This just comes along in a long-standing, let's call it, dispute between Tbilisi and Brussels over many things. How do you expect this to have impact on the relations between the South Caucasus country and the European Union bloc if this sanctions package does indeed include the port?
Well, maybe just it could just maybe have some relations or link with Azerbaijani oil just delivered to the European Union just about directions, because Kulevi just about oil terminal also exploited by the SOCAR, the Azerbaijani just corporations. And in that case, maybe just about it, maybe linked with Azerbaijan, just about national, just about case study or connectivities. But to say just about long, it's not a good just about case if just these sanctions will be adopted by European Union, because it will be indicate that Georgia somehow and this political regime somehow engaged in about illegal transactions with contemporary Kremlin just about authorities, and behind stand its own just about cronies, tycoon and economic cronies, including so-called about dark fleet, which also very active at time of being, and they just by doing so, Russia wants to avoid any sanctionary policy which been put forward by the European Union and the United States. So I guess it will be just about not a good and pleasant just about applications to the Georgian status. Just about European Union and Georgia's contemporary relations been ruined and absolutely just strained, not by European Union just about, first of all, initiative. It's also ruined by the Georgians incumbent authoritarian regime just about steps forwarded, and of course, but it has like a more political, just about foundations and founds. But if Kulevi just been put under the sanctionary just policy provisions, I guess it's about 26 just about package should be included, this Kulevi oil terminal. So it also just will be just cast with economic ruin policy between the Georgia and European Union, not only on political one. So it will be just means that about the political and economy relations between European and Georgia will be just about neglected.
It is a big issue for the Europeans, isn't it? This circumvention of sanctions with so many sanctions packages. They're trying to plug all the holes Moscow finds. How successful and up to date would you say they are?
Well, at time of course, sanctions also just played an enormous role in just about cast and just limited Russian capabilities in waging a war against Ukraine. Of course, it has its own effect, for sure. And of course, Russia, that's why they created so-called dark fleet. They not used about a formal so-called white so-called fleet. And of course, these dark fleet just about transactions and engagement with such kind of the so-called dark economy and shadow economy just about way, and also indicated about Russia's some plausibilities in that directions. So it also just affect to Russia's economy, financial assets developments, and I think so that well, in some cases the sanctions maybe could not be worked completely, but they also working about 35% at least.
Vahtan, thank you so much
for
joining us and sharing your insight.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching. That's all we have for you for now. Stay tuned to A News.